어느, 무슨, and 어떤 can all mean which or what, but they're quite different, so I'm going to be explaining their differences as simply as possible today. But first, thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon as well as my channel members here on YouTube. You are keeping the lights on here. You're helping me to pay my electric bill and make these videos. I run this channel completely on member support and people who buy my books, so it's really thanks to you that I can do any of this. And if you out there would also like to help support me and my channel to make newer and better videos and more lessons and more content, I'll have links for how you can join my Patreon as well as my YouTube channel in the video description box below. Okay, so let's look at these words one at a time. We'll start with musen. Now, musen is really simple because if you know the word 뭐, meaning what, musen is the same meaning, but 뭐 is a noun, right? 무슨 is an adjective. So it's essentially just an adjective. It just means what, and an adjective is used before a noun. So you can say 무슨 책, what book, 무슨 색, what color, 무슨 말이에요? Literally, what words, or what are you talking about? 무슨 말이에요? What are you talking about? Again, note that this word means what when it's in a question, just like in English. However, 무슨 can also translate as which if you're choosing between several options, but it literally just means what. For example, let's say you're choosing between a bunch of items and you don't know any of those items, right? You can ask them 무슨 item, just like you might say what something in English, like what pen. There's a big pile of pens and you're like, well, what pen can I pick? In that way, you can translate it as which, but it still really just means what. However, there are some restrictions with this word. You're not going to use 무슨 before these words. 것 for a thing, so you're not going to say what thing. 곳 for a location or a place, so you're not going to say 무슨 곳 for a location, or 쪽 for a direction. What direction? For these ones, you might say which, but you're not going to say what. So just remember these three, or don't. You're not going to use it that much anyway. But yeah, in case you want to know, this is the restriction for this word. Okay, besides that though, it just means what. Okay, next we have 어느, which actually means which. And this is used when there are multiple options to choose from, just like which in English. So this means which one of a set of options. Now, the key to using this is that it's used when you're comparing things. You can't just use it when there's nothing to choose from, right? For example, if you're asking which movie someone wants to watch and there's a list of 5 movies that you know, you can use 어느 영화, which movie. Just like in English, asking what movie or which movie has a different nuance, it does in Korean too. For example, if you were to say what movie, 무슨 영화, well, that means you don't even have any idea what the options are, right? It sounds like what movie? Whereas 어느 영화 means that you do. You know which ones there are, you're just trying to pick, right? You're just choosing, you're comparing. So both can work, but 어느, which, would sound a bit more polite, right? Just like it does in English. What movie versus which movie, right? It has that same nuance difference that we have in English. I'll say this again, anytime you want to sound more polite and you're picking between options, 어느 would be a little bit better. Not to say that 무슨 is rude, but because it implies like what, it could sound a little bit less polite than using 어느, which only means which. However, you'll also see 어느 used in a few specific situations. You might also see the words 어느 정도, which means an amount, or 어느 만큼, which also has the same meaning. So these mean which amount, but this is how you say how much. However, I recommend learning these words separately. I don't really think you should mix them up with this because they're used like their own words. But just so you know, if you see these words, it's not which meaning, it's just used as its own word to mean how much. Okay, so now let's go on to the last of our 3. 어떤. Now, 어떤 means what type, or what kind. So it's for asking for more details about something. You're not just saying what, but what kind of, what type of, right? Yeah, that's it. Really, that's the whole explanation. Now, for a little bit more, this actually comes from a verb which you've probably seen, 어떻다, which is where you get the expression 어때요 or 어때? Like, how is it? 어때요? So it's the same verb that also brings you this. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. So if someone asks you, what food do you want to eat? Say you're hungry and you're wondering about what you want to eat, which one of these do you think you might use? Would you say musen? Would you say 어느? Or would you say 어떤? They probably wouldn't say what food do you want to eat. They might not say which food you want to eat unless they presented you with options, right? So if you have no options, you'd probably use 어떤, like what kind of food you want to eat. Here's another one. If someone asks you what movie you want to see and they use the word musen 영화, so what movie, you could answer anything, right? Because you're not being presented with a set of options to choose from. They're just asking like what movie. You can pick anything from the Star Wars holiday special to Jingle All the Way, one of my favorite movies. However, if they were to ask 어떤, that would mean like what kind of movie, in which case, how would you answer if someone asked you 어떤 영화 when they're asking what movie do you want to watch? You'd probably say something like maybe a horror movie or a comedy movie or a drama or anything like that, because it's talking about the kind or the type of movie, not just the title or the movie that you're watching. Or if they were to ask you which movie, 어느, say they show you a list, well then you'd be picking something from the list of options, right? Okay, but everything I've talked about so far has been how to use these three in a question. If you're using these and it's not a question, there are different uses to all three of these. So first of all, musen. I'm laughing because if you say musen, it's actually a slang expression. I think the closest we have in English would be like saying my eye, like something, my eye. Like, I don't believe you, that sort of expression. The way it's used is you'll hear a noun and then musen, or you'll hear it used with 소리 commonly. So before a noun, 소리 is like a sound, but it can also be used kind of a way to talk down about the sounds that are coming out of someone's mouth, meaning their words. So like, 무슨 소리야? Like, what the heck are you talking about? That sort of thing. So it's kind of a slang expression. It's a slang way to say what, as in you're like, what? Okay, so that's musen. Next we have 어느. If you hear 어느 and it's used not as a question, then it has a different meaning. It can mean a certain or just a. And you'll hear this used in a lot of stories, like fairy tales, or if someone's just telling a story about something. It's a way to say there lived in a certain village, there lived a certain person, a certain thing like that. For example, 옛날 어느 작은 마을에. So a small village, in a small village, in a small village. A long time ago in a small village is what you get. So again, it means a certain or a. Basically, it's a way of saying there was something without specifying any details about it. Just there was a certain this, and I'm going to talk about it. Okay, one more. If you see 어떤 used and it's not in a question like that, it has even less information about whatever you're talking about. So it has that same meaning of a or a certain, but even less information about it. So if you were to make our previous example, 옛날 어떤 작은 마을에, it also means a long time ago in a small village. However, it's not just like there was a small village. It's kind of like saying, I don't really know anything about it, but there was some small village like that. So you're not gonna see this one used as much in like a fairy tale, but if you are telling a story to someone, say about something that happened, 어떤 이상한 사람 있었는데, there's a weird guy there, kind of like that. If you're telling a story to someone else and you wanna have that meaning of a certain, some, that sort of meaning, then use 어떤. And this one's used fairly common in speech, while 어느 is used a little bit more in formal uses and like fairy tales. All right, did I miss anything? I don't think I did, but where have you seen these words used before? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and special thanks to my Patreon supporters and my channel members for keeping this channel alive, and I will see you again in the next video. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.